Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Good Stuff. I'm Kevin Bille, and as always, we appreciate you joining us today. Hey, I'd love for you to head on over to YouTube, type in "Good Stuff with Good Stuff with Kevin." How about that? I can't even say it. Hit the subscribe button, and just if you've enjoyed these videos or it's added value to your life, we'd appreciate you doing that. Well, today I have somebody with me. I won't be able. I won't forget his first name. It's the same as mine. Kevin Kelley is the head football coach at Pulaski Academy in Little Rock, Arkansas. Kevin, it's great to have you.
I'm honored to be here. I looked it up, and you've had some people that belong on here a lot better than me, so I'm honored to be a part of that group.
Well, hey, I should have said when we were talking off the screen, as I watch all these videos on you and research you, I'm just glad that as we're sitting here today, you got your shirt on for me for the show. I appreciate you. Hey, well,
different culture down here. I'm from South Arkansas, very rural redneck. I didn't even know I had a shirt until I was 14 years old.
I love it, man. I love it. I would. It's different up here today. 10 degrees and snowing. But hey, man, as everybody knows, you're this coach that never punts. You're onside kicking it after every score. You're going for two. I think you love these 20-yard plus passes now. Did I get all that right so far? Am I on the right path?
Yeah, you're on the right path. Yeah.
I'm just so intrigued, being a former coach especially, but just in general, by you doing something that no one else does and has such conviction with it. And then winning to back it up. I mean, that's what's crucial and what everybody cares about, right? But take us back to the beginning for the people that don't know this story or don't know as much as maybe I do, and just how you went about this, please.
It really I'm going to take you way back really quickly. I grew up in a family. Mom and dad split up. We didn't have any money at all. We were definitely in poverty, and at that time, you really don't even know what that is when you're that age, but I remember my mom always saying nobody on either side of my family had ever gone to college. And my mom said, hey, you've got to be different. You've got to break this chain for your kids so they don't have to live like this. And that was a big deal. But that was the first signs of me thinking differently that I can think back to. People say, where did this start? It's vastly different when nobody in your family's ever done something. What you do is you graduate, you get out of high school, you go to work. That made me think different was okay. Because at that age, you don't think, you want to be just like everybody else. You don't want anybody to think you're different, at 8 years old. So fast forward, when I got hired as the head coach here, I had been an assistant and they were looking for a head coach, and I literally didn't even ask for it. And they just called me in and go, we're giving it to you. We think you've done a good job. We like the way you interact with the kids. What you doing? Okay. And I thought, great. And I went and sat down in the coach's office, the head coach's office for the first time. And I'm like, wait a minute, I think I'll be good at this, but how am I going to be any better than the other guys that have been here? Because it's going to be the same kids, same rules, same game. And it hit me like just in the face that you better start evaluating. And I was lucky enough to ask, why are we doing what we're doing in our program in every little thing? So I went month by month. In January, when we're doing off season, why are we doing it this way? So go through all there. Why is our summer program this way? Why are we? And I get to the on the field stuff, and I called in my defensive coordinator. I go, okay, now why are we punting? And the obvious answer is, well, you got to run the ball and play defense. Back then, it was pre-Moneyball because Moneyball came out after that.
Right.
Because this was 03, and I'd seen a little information because I was scouring the internet trying to find anything that would help me win games. And I'd seen some information about how maybe field position wasn't as important as we thought it was. And again, pre-analytics, pre-Moneyball. And that made me start asking a lot of questions. So, and when he said that, I started researching and I'm like, I don't think they're right. And this information kind of gives me credence to the fact that they're not right. So anyway, that year, I started experimenting and going for it on fourth down in situations I thought was appropriate. And then it just snowballed from there because 3 or 4 years of that and was extremely successful. And then I get into 07 and I want to experiment with onside kicks. And, we had some success with that. And then I got to see the butterfly effects of, if we're not going to punt, why am I wasting 20 minutes a day practicing punting?
Right.
Then I freed up those minutes and saw the benefits of that. And those can't even be taken into analytics to prove you shouldn't punt even more if you don't have to work on it. So To make a long story a short, what it did was it opened the door for me to ask why and not want the de facto answer because that's the way it's always been done.
Yes.
That's the way other championship teams do it. I wanted to really, because what do kids do nowadays more than they want to know why. And it really made me think the following too. Whatever we're doing, and it's really affected my whole life. Whatever we're doing, I let the kids at appropriate times. You can't ask me in the middle of practice and expect me to take 5 minutes. You can ask me why, and I've got an answer for you. And I've got a good answer, and it's not going to be because I said so, and not because that's what you do. That's just what you do. I want to be able to really explain it to the point where it's affected me so much in life. I wore this shirt today because I knew we were doing a Zoom, and it says championship habits, and I wanted to portray a message. I wore the kind of socks I did. They're a little thicker because it's a little colder out here today than it usually is. So I want to, if anybody asks me anything about my life, I want to be able to tell them why. And all that stemmed from me walking in and going, in the history of our school, we've never won anything. Why should I be able to win anything, any different than those guys did? And it was the best thing that's ever happened to me, really, besides spirituality and getting married and those kinds of things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think I could stop right here and we'd have a lot just in that answer because I think there's so many teams and businesses that aren't asking that. And that answer, I've been at places before. This is how we've always done them, and yet there's no banners on the wall. There's nothing else to back it up. It's bothersome. How crazy though, Coach? How crazy did people think you were initially? And I mean, maybe even your own coaching staff and players, because you've got the noise outside the locker room to begin with anyhow, but then within your locker room, you got to get them. I love the one Brandon Sir was on here and said, before I get them to buy in, I need them to believe in. And so how crazy were they? And then what did you do to get that buy-in or belief from those people?
Yeah, and he and I differ a little bit on that thought process because I don't have to have them believe. I just have to, and what we're doing at that moment, I just have to have them understand the commitment toward organization means you can discuss it, but eventually whoever's the head makes the decision.
Good.
And you're either committed to it or you can go find somewhere else to do it. And that's the way I've always been about things. And I'll tell you the good things about that later on. But you're right. You're exactly right. The first thing I worried about was the guys that are on the field. And I'm a very military-esque in some ways. I mean, ultimately, when I say this is the way we're going to do it, this is the way we're going to do it. If you don't like it, whatever. But I was worried about the kids because they're the ones that have to execute this. And I didn't want them questioning because I do believe if you question something, you're not going to perform as well. If I'm selling, oil on the side and try to get our brand in and I don't believe in some of the things that my organization's doing, I'm not going to be as good at selling that oil. It's just the way it is. So I brought the kids in first, and ironically enough, I'm now a contrarian thinker. When I brought the kids in, they loved the idea because they're like, Coach, we've been playing NCAA football on PlayStation, and that's the way we already do it. And I'm like, well, that was an easy sell. And kids don't mind, when they get to be teenagers, kids don't mind being a little different. Right. When you're 7 and 8, you don't want to wear a red shirt if everybody else is wearing a blue one. But they didn't mind because they thought this will make us different. And I presented it in a good way. The presentation's everything. If my wife says, honey, how's this dress look? Oh, man, I go, looks great. Or if she says, how's this dress on? I go, looks great. Just those two presentation words can be vastly different meanings. So I presented it to them like, guys, you get to be the only team in the world to play this kind of football. And they were all in. That made it easy. The coaches on the defensive side of the ball were the hard ones because they've never seen it. They didn't believe it. And they think in the end, what makes you look bad? Giving up points. Nobody looks and evaluates it on anything other than, guys, you gave up 20 points a game last year. And if we do this, we're going to give them the ball on our own 10-yard line sometimes. We're going to give up 27 points a game, and everybody's going to look and go, well, your defense got worse. It didn't really, but they're going to think that. So, I went back and forth, and I explained the math to them. Luckily, I had some smart guys. I explained the math to them and went over it with them, and they, I think they knew I was probably on the right path, but they didn't know how extreme I would be.
Right.
And ultimately, though, I'm like, look, here's the deal. If you don't believe in me, I'll help you get another job. But this is what we're going to do. You're not going to be able to talk me out of it because as a coach, if I believe in something, isn't it my job to not worry about what you think or the media is going to say and to give us the best chance to win? And I believe with all I'm worth that this is the best chance. So the presentation was big and the reasoning, and I let them have some ownership in it and talk about it and try to convince me. And I learned something then. Now I say, when I come up with an idea that's different, I'll go, try to talk me out of it. You get the opportunity, and I'm listening. They like that. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't, but they know I'll listen. And as long as they get a chance, then in the end, you get them to buy in. I mean, they'll buy in if you say no, for the most part. Not everybody. I've had a few that have had to go their separate way, but that's the way I've done it. And then, I would encourage, I don't want anybody changing my way of football, because I've got an advantage. I don't want the world to change, because right now I've got a big advantage. But I would say this: if you're going to ever get a group to change, you got to consider everybody that's going to be talking to them too. Like, I used to think, I don't care what the parents think, because the boys are playing football and my coaches are. But here's what you got to worry about: when little Johnny goes home and his dad's like, "Coach Kelley's an idiot. Y'all should have punted it." It's going to affect little Johnny when he comes back the next day. He's going to doubt Coach Kelley, and he's not going to be quite as good on that field, or as all in, or as committed. He's going to be like, and then if it doesn't work and we go off the field and they get it on our 15-yard line, little Johnny's like, "My dad was right. Coach Kelley's an idiot." So the smartest thing I did was I addressed our parents, and it was tough. They had no ideas coming. I walk out there, the mic, I had a parent meeting, and I said, "Hey, listen, this is what I would do if Alabama hired me tomorrow." Nick Saban said I quit. Alabama wanted to hire me. I would say, first game, 85,000 people, give me the mic. I'm talking to them before we walk out on the field. And I said this. I said, "Listen, here's the deal. As the football coach, I've got no reason to do what you would consider stupid stuff, and we're about to do what you would consider stupid stuff. My goal is to win. Would you all agree with that?" Everybody will agree. The coach wants to win.
Right.
So I've got no other agenda to do this besides winning, because if it doesn't work, I'm going to get fired.
That's right.
I mean, I know that. So what's going to help us win is I know you want to win, and I want to win. What's going to cause us to lose is if, when you see this quote stupid stuff and Johnny goes home, if you say bad things about it. I'm not asking you not to lay in bed with your wife at night and say Coach Kelley's an idiot, or even to sit in the stands and turn to your buddy and say Coach Kelley's an idiot. I'm just asking you not to say it to Johnny, and not to yell it during the game so the kids question, because will you agree that doesn't help us win? It causes us to lose. So if our goal is both to win, so I tried to get the fans and the parents in the boat of, look, we're all trying to win. What part can I do to win? And that is not say Coach Kelley's an idiot. Right. Now, say it all you want to. Send me texts and emails. That won't bother me. If you need to vent, just don't cause the kids not to, because that's not going to help us. That's the way I sold it. And I got lucky. God gave me a little sense, or maybe an anomaly of a thought there, because if I don't do that, I don't know that I'm still doing this, because I caught a lot of crap from the media, and because they pick apart the one time you didn't punt and they scored a touchdown,
Yep.
But overall, I won the parents and the coaches and the kids over by doing that, and it made it easier and able to continue and add on to it.
I'd be interested. I mentioned conviction earlier. You just made a comment about spirituality. Where does that come from you, though, Coach? Like, it's got to be rooted. Is that what it is? Is that where it's rooted in? We've had conversations with guests about that before. What is it for you, if you don't mind sharing? Where do you get that from?
I go back to when I was young. I had a rough childhood, and I'm not asking for self-pity. Probably a good movie or a book, but I'm not asking for self-pity or anything like that. But I will say this: my mom, and she had a lot of problems too, but my mom taught me, you better have something to cling to, no matter what, no matter who's against you, what. And I don't walk around wearing a Jesus fish on, but I'm a Christian, and I'm devoted. And what that taught me was, you've got to have some lines that you're not going to back down from. And, in my spirituality, you can hold a gun to my head and blow my head off to ask me to denounce God, and I'm not going to do it. That's my line. I've got a bunch of lines. And in today's society, it's amazing how many lines we used to wouldn't have backed down from 20 years ago, but now we do, because of the social media pressure, or the changing values or morals of society. But I learned that there's some things, if you believe in them, if you believe, which in effect means we know, even though some people would say you can't know that, it's subjective. But if you believe in something, I'm not backing down. And in this situation, I looked at the math and evaluated it and went through film after film and thought, what if, and what's the worst that could happen, and here and there. And I believe this was the right thing. And I decided I'm going to die on this hill. I'm going to die on this cross, so to speak. And I was convicted. And it started with my conviction to my religion. There's certain things I will never deviate from in that religion. And I transferred that to things in my life. There are certain things that I will never back down from that I believe on in my life. I have backed down like some people have at other things, but there's certain ones that I'm not going to back down. And I decided this was the best way to coach football. And it's because I think it's the best way for us to win. I'm not going to back down because the media is giving me a hard time. Or I'm getting dirty emails, So that's what it started with. I don't know if that makes sense. I kind of rambled.
No, that's good. That's good, though. I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's important. And I got to think that once it started working, the belief and trust just continued to skyrocket. I'd be interested to know, we didn't talk about this, so excuse my ignorance on it. I don't know, this setup in terms of, being a college coach and then going to high school. I'd always say I could be bad one year in college and pretty good the next year because I could recruit, and you can't do that. Well, technically in high school, but you've got your feeder system. Now, I don't know what the setup is there in Arkansas, but I'd be really curious to know, if are there certain specific fundamentals within your system that you have or you're trying to develop, and then how far down does that go? Is it, JV, Frosh, middle school, youth, like what are the similarities and differences, and how much are you on the same page? I know I'm asking a couple things here, communication, but I think you understand probably with where I'm going with that. So if you could explain that a little, I think that's important for coaches to hear.
Yeah.
But I also think that's important for the dynamics of a business to understand and grasp as well.
Yeah, and it's a really good question. I wish I had done where I'm at now a lot sooner. As you get older and wiser, you start figuring out ways that, to stay on top of things, to stay on top when you're, becoming a champion. It's hard. Everybody's shooting for you, and you've got to change. The game changes. Their strategies are going to change. You better do something different. So I was smart enough to go look at things, and at first it was just, y'all do what you want in junior high because that'll teach the kids different ways to think and that there are different offenses and defenses and all that. Then I'm like, what am I doing? I want these kids to do what we're doing. So I moved it down into junior high. Then I got extreme and I started moving it down into 5th and 6th grade. So that's where you can start playing for our school is in 5th and 6th grade. And so I went down there and I spend time with the coaches every year, the 5th and 6th grade coaches, trying to give them a very watered down version of what we do. Our language, we use a different terminology than everybody in the game of football at every level. Most people use the same, but that's a long story. But I want to be able to yell out one word to get 11 kids to do what I want them to do within 1 second and run that within 5 seconds so the other team can't change. So you have to use different nomenclature for that. So that said, I started doing that, probably 10, I've been the head coach here 18 years. I'm going to say 10, 12 years ago. Okay. I finally got it all the way down to 5th and 6th grade. And then now I've done something even dumber. And I say dumber, but it works like a champ. This is going to sound, you go to big time football schools when we've only got 7 coaches on staff. When I say 7, we used to have 6 senior high coaches and 3 or 4 junior high coaches and 2 7th grade coaches. Slowly but surely, this is not a good thing always. I whittled away all those positions, and my senior high coaches are the coaches for 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, wow, JV, and varsity. Now, the bad news is it's all the same coaches doing that. So Monday nights, they've got games. Thursday nights, they've got 2 games. Friday nights, they've got games. And we're having to get ready for all that. But our kids now are coached by the same human beings for 6 years. Now, most coaches, and it's hard to get guys that want to continue doing that. It's a lot of work. During the season, it's killer. And I've learned to do things different ways off the field in our week to help them with that. But our kids are learning in 7th grade what they're going to be doing as a senior. That's huge. Man, by the time they're in high school, we're doing so many different things. It's more complex than any college offense and defense. I'll guarantee you.
I got to think too, like, which is so important, probably always, but especially nowadays with this, I got to think your relationships. I mean, that's a huge thing to spend that amount of time with them. I mean, compared to when if a kid first comes up and goes through that process, a middle school, plays on the freshman team, plays on the JV, a lot of schools might not get that kid till the junior year.
Right.
And you've got this amount of gap where you're extending that gap. So I think
Oh,
the relationship piece is huge there.
you're exactly right. And so much of coaching, you get the point across and you're able to teach if the kid trusts you and values you and thinks you know what you're doing. We get all that crap out of the way in the first 2
Yeah,
years, seventh
early.
and eighth
Yeah.
grade. Yeah. And you're right. It just exponentially increases the speed at which you can do things, teach things, trust each other. You know what to expect out of them. Now, the sacrifice is during the season, it's tough. I
I
mean,
bet.
it is really, really difficult for our coaches. But in the end, they got a couple extra stipends, so they like that,
Yeah.
And then I've changed our varsity week. It is so much different than any way you would ever imagine practices and games in a week goes to make it better for them where you can stand it. In effect, we literally, out of all the film we watch together, you're talking, I don't know, 15, 20 hours a week of film together. We watch zero of it in the office together.
Yeah.
It's at my house or at a restaurant on a Saturday with big screens. But we had to because we're coaching
Yep.
5 teams every week.
That's good though. And you also mentioned something earlier. The school I went to in college, coach, was it was an all girls school. We ended up going co-ed. I was the only dumb enough guy to take the job. They were 9-49 overall and 0-30 in the league. But about 4 or 5 years into it, we were trying to compete with some of these other schools. We just weren't going to be able to compete with facilities and all these other things. So
Right.
we made a shift philosophically and effective recruiting. Played more zone, and it was huge. And you said something to me earlier that really resonated with that, and that's why I'm sharing it. And I want to follow up. You talked about how much it freed up. You said 20 minutes, I don't have to work on this in practice. That's something that was, I'm like, my gosh, we don't have to do this anymore. And it's all about us. Excuse me. I would be curious to know, I don't know that you really know this, but is it true too? Because I felt this when we went zone. Now, when you played us, 90% of the teams were doing man and everything else. So everything you did that week to prepare for that team, you were used to that. But now when you came and played us, you now had to change your week. So that is almost a mental edge as much as it is a physical edge, that when teams come to prepare for you, they're now probably practicing onside kicks nonstop. They're now probably doing something with 4th down, 2-point conversions. I mean, that's got to be another advantage that you have with your system.
Yeah, I call it the butterfly effect. And, everybody talks about in college football, when you play Air Force or if you play the Army or Navy, it sucks that week because you're just getting ready for the option, which nobody runs anymore. And it's hard to get ready for that in a week. And when you're getting ready for us, you got to worry about the 4th down thing. You got to worry about the onside kick thing. We don't return punts. We don't kickoffs. We line up in a 5-4 onside hands team, and we don't even practice kickoff return. So it does 2 things. One, if you've got to play us, and I get out in the media what our record is, we recover an onside kick, because I do want them all to know that 136-5, we recover one. Well, the other teams hear that. What do you think they're going to make sure they don't do? Give up an onside kick. So they're spending an inordinate amount of time taken away from things they usually work on. And even if it doesn't work in the game, I'm getting 30 minutes of their practice devoted to that. So I'm getting 2 hours a week.
That's right.
That they're not practicing on something else. So that's things that analytics can't measure, is how much different that was. They also can't measure, and I've tried to get them to, all the guys, the analytics site and the Romer that wrote the Cal Berkeley piece and all that. I tried to get them to, you've got to assign some variable when you're figuring this up on psychology and emotion, because sports are that way. And I can prove to you that we score at an even higher rate when we recover an onside kick as we do when we just attain the ball on the 50-yard line. And it's the psychology. We got one and they're down and we go score quickly, usually. And they won't, because there's no constant to it. They don't know what to assign it. I'm like, well, think of the minimum value, but they won't do it when they're figuring out the analytics. Right. But I know there's more to it. So you're exactly right on that. And then the flip side of that is, and I go back and forth. We do a million things and do them just slightly above average because I want an answer for everything. Some people, there was one team that we had trouble with for a while that does one thing, but by gosh, they do it better than everybody else. And so there's that too. But, when I was trying to think, how am I going to develop strategy first, I came across Sun Tzu's Art of War and just started reading the things out there. Because I think if something's wide world accepted to being great, not just in your community, it's probably got some good things to it. But the number one quote that I think that I base everything off of is in Sun Tzu's Art of War. It says, those that do few things must prepare for the enemy. Those that do many things, the enemy must prepare for you. And,
Good.
and you can win either way, but people go, well, what do you hang your hat on? I hang my hat on the fact that we don't hang our hat on anything.
Yeah, right.
We can do a million different things, and we're not great at any of them, but we're slightly above average at all of them. And when you've got that many things, the human brain only remembers about 6 things at one moment, and any other stimuli outside that causes you confusion and stuff. So I started thinking about, okay, well, let's say when a kid's out there on a play on defense and we're on offense, he needs to know the down, the distance, and then he's got to know what defense they're in front-wise, what coverage they're in. There's 4 things before we start. Now he's got to look at my formation and know what our tendencies are out of those. And if throw a motion in, or once the play starts, do any kind of misdirection, I've put him in a confused, the frontal part of his brain is confused and slower and makes him hesitate. And you hesitate in sports and you're done. And so this is something that goes along with that. The onside kicks, the 4th downs, the not returning punts, all these things that we do make people hesitate even in their planning for us. How are we going to get ready for these guys? And they probably spend 2 hours trying to figure out how they're even going to start their Monday practice getting ready for us.
Yeah, for sure. And then, like you said, it just happens in the moment, it's got to become mentally exhausting, mentally disturbing, mentally fill in the blank. It becomes such a mental block, like you alluded to. So, I mean, the $1 million question that you constantly hear, if it works, and apparently it does. I mean, you've been the USA Today National Coach of the Year. You guys, I think it's like 216, 29-1, 9 championships. Why aren't more people doing it? And before you answer that, like if somebody were to ask me, should you, like we ended up pressing then, I don't think you can press in the NBA. So why aren't more people doing it? To me, especially the bad teams that have nothing else to lose. But does that matter at each level when you answer that question?
It's a good question. And I mean, a real good question. And I don't think, people don't use people find reasons not to do things rather than looking for reasons to do things. And you're talking about pressing in the NBA. I mean, how many teams have really committed to pressing in the NBA to even see if it works? Right. I mean, committed where they went 82 games. This is our philosophy. The answer is 0, right? Because the thing in the NBA is you can't press in the NBA. Well, you're afraid if you do and it doesn't work, you'll be fired. But if you're at the bottom of the league, you're going to be fired anyway. So what are you doing? But that all said, we look for reasons not to do things. And that's one of the reasons nobody does it. The other reason is sort of like what we just said, risk aversion. If you're a coach and you are losing, but you're losing the conventional way, you may or may not get an extra year or 2 to turn it around. But if you lose and you're doing it my way, you're going to be fired quickly, because not only are you losing, you're an idiot. All the fans want it, whatever. It makes you get fired faster. Now, I got that from talking to the biggest names in the game of football, saying the same stuff. Well, if you lose that way, you're going to get fired. You're in college and you go for it you're a team that's 4-4, 8 games in, and your fans are yelling about your head, and you're in game 9 and first quarter, it's 4th and 1 on your own 40, and you go for it and don't make it, and you lose the game by 1 touchdown, and they scored on that drive. You may not have a job Monday. Yeah. And they say, we're not willing to take that chance, even though big situation, you should always go for it on 4th and 1 at every level. They're not going to, because they might not make it out of Monday. So basically it comes down to this. The desire to keep your job for longer, and I get it, overcomes the knowledge that big picture you're going to win more games, because we know it might not work in that instance and you might not make it out of it. Could it work at all levels? Yes. The friends that I've had that have coached at all levels, college, pro, high school, the ones that have gone back and forth, high school to college, will tell you that football is football. And I've used analytics for years from college, because there's not any in high school. There's not a database where everybody puts it all in and ciphers through the information. But one of my good friends that went from high school to college, everybody's like, well, he went up, this won't work, was Gus Malzahn. I coached against him. He beat me 63-0 my very first game as head coach. So I thought, Gus, what am I doing? But anyway, 2 years later, he goes up and he's coaching at Tulsa as the offensive coordinator. Well, he's the Arkansas offensive coordinator. They do really good. He gets in a fight with the head coach there, and and ends up going to Tulsa, leads the country in offense. And everybody always said your high school offense won't work. The guy ran the exact same thing. But he goes, well, he goes, they're going, you're playing college defenses. And it was a great statement. Yeah, but I'm not playing with high school players on
That's
offense.
right.
I'm playing with college players on offense. Football's football, basketball's basketball. Things that work at each level. Like I thought, the analytics in basketball now are basically you shouldn't shoot any shot except for threes and inside 5 feet.
Yeah, right.
There's exceptions to the mid-range jumper, but in reality, with a percentage of defensive rebounds as you get compared to offensive rebounds and the low percentage mid-rangers or shots, you shouldn't shoot them. They're a turnover. And those analytics are the same in pro, college, high school, just like in football. The thing that wins more college football games than anything else, everybody thinks it's turnovers. It's not. It's 20-yard plays. Then it's turnovers, but everybody works on those. So you're not going to be a lot better than anybody else is, to be honest with you. And then it's sacks. Whoever gets the most sacks in a game is like the third highest thing that determines who wins or loses. And they're the same at everything. Some people find reasons not to use them. Well, that's what it is in college, but that's not what it would be in high. Sacks are drive killers at every level. Here's a case in point. I want to know when the analytic is there, why is that work? And would it really transfer down? And so I looked at a big sample size for us. I mean, this is going to sound arrogant, Kevin. I'm the best offensive mind that's ever walked the face of this planet. Now, I think you got to have faith. That sounds arrogant. I'm really good. And everybody that's ever coached with me and against me will tell you he's probably the best. Because I'm not good at anything. I can barely change a light bulb at home. But for some reason, God gave me the ability to be good at that. Now, that all said, when you try to implement something and you look for reasons to do it or not to do it and really have an open mind, it's a game changer as opposed to looking for reasons not to do something. I want to know if it works. So I analyzed all of our games. We scored touchdowns in the games. In my sample size, you're talking hundreds of drives. At an 88% rate, we scored a touchdown. Now, that's a crazy, insane number because the number's really like 30, 33 in college and high school, but when we got sacked on a drive, even if it was on first down, we throw it 70% of the time. If we got sacked on first down, our number went from 90 to 8. If we get a sack, we only score 8% of the drive. That's a drive killer. They say sacks are drive killers. You can't overcome it because for many, many reasons. And I mean, the play calling changes. Your mindset changes. You might not even go for the first down if it's second and 12 now or something. Now you're just like, can we make it halfway? Now you've got to be 100% successful on 2 straight plays to be able to get a first down. Yeah. Whatever the reason, I saw the number across a big sample size. I'm looking for reasons to bring new stuff in when most people are looking for a reason to say, no, I'm doing the right thing here. They don't want it to be their fault that they lose. They don't want it to be the answers out there. And here's a thing I learned a long time ago too. I was teaching science classes in Texas and trying to get the kids to think differently. We literally at one point developed light bulbs that never go out, but it was lobbied against making them legal because it would have put so many people out of work back in the day in the factory. We made tires that treads would last for hundreds of thousands of miles. We didn't manufacture them because it would have put tire companies out of business. And the only reason I tell you that is because there's an answer for everything that you do. I don't care if you're the worst team ever. There's an answer out there. There's something you could be doing that would be helping you win more games, period. But instead, we don't want to go, well, dang, I've been coaching here 5 years and we're not doing any better. It's just because the kids we got or our facilities suck or whatever. You don't want to go, I didn't find the answer. It's not the male ego and it's not human nature to want to do that. Of course, that's why we have 50% of our marriages are failed. We look for reasons to quit instead of looking for reasons to keep going.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Now you've met and you've talked to coaches that maybe you probably thought you'd never interact with. I mean, heck,
for sure.
Crying out loud, Bill Belichick called you the best high school coach in the nation. It's been HBO, Sports Illustrated. What's that been like for you? And I guess is there a good story to share? Just some best takeaways from that experience or those experiences.
The first guy that ever did it was back in 2007. And so we're plugging along and I'm fighting the local media a little bit because they're like, what's going on over there? And I'm definitely fighting the coaches. It would be a thing when I went to a coach meeting, at the end of the year, I'm the kid that's got leprosy. I'm sitting by myself. They wouldn't sit by me. And they were saying, you're making a mockery of the game, or you're bending the rules. I'm not bending the rules. I'm just finding ways to play within the rules. But that's what it was. So it was tough. It was difficult. What all changed thing, if you believe in, I'm a big Malcolm Gladwell fan. If you haven't read any of his books, I got to meet Malcolm and spend some time with him. It was the coolest thing ever. Yeah,
he's great. He's smarter. He's smarter than us two combined, Coach.
Yeah. He's a smart dude. He's a real smart dude. I still hold it against him. I hope he sees this. At one point, he said, "Hey, you and I ought to write a book together one day," and I was just floored. And he never did, and probably because it would have helped me out more than it helped him. Or he found something smarter to write it on. But that all said, when a guy from, it was called ESPN Page 2, and that was the website, and a guy came and wrote a story, spent some time here and wrote a story on us, and about what we were doing. That was in 2007. And that really was the tipping point, to refer to Malcolm Gladwell. That was the tipping point that changed things, because then Sports Illustrated came in. Then that was in 2007. We didn't win a championship, but I won my second one in 2008. And we were the first team in the history of the high school football to win a championship and not have a punt in that year. And that got a little bit of notoriety. So next year in 2009, Sports Illustrated sends John Wertheim, who's mostly a tennis writer, sends John Wertheim down. He spent a couple of days writing something, and he did a thing in Sports Illustrated. That got a little media attention. Now, at that time, I'm hesitant. I'm like kind of embarrassed because I know how these other coaches are treating me. And I'm like, literally worldwide, I'm going to be like a frowned upon coach, like a weirdo, that kind of thing. But I'm like, you know what? The kids love it when there's any media about Sports Illustrated or writing about our program, And so you got to say yes to it. I really didn't want to at that time. And so 2009, he does that. Now it's gaining a little momentum. And then I think it was 2011, HBO Real Sports, they actually called me in 10 and decided not to put it on. And then they came back in 11 and did a Real Sports. And that kind of caused it to blast off to another level. And then along the way, there's been so many different things that were done. ESPN did a 30 for 30 short on us and followed us a whole week. And we happened to be going down to Highland Park where Matthew Stafford played and Clayton Kershaw. And they had not lost a game. This was in 15. They had not lost a game since 1999 at home.
Oh my gosh.
Talk about tradition. I forgot the streak, but it was huge. 99. And we go down there and they were following us. They picked that week. I didn't have any say so. So they got all their boom mics and people and they're following us. So we go down there and I'm like, oh my gosh, which is going to be a natural disaster right here on this 30 for 30. And we beat them. We ended the streak on that. So the things were right to be in the media at the right time when they happened. And it just kind of fell the right way, and to the point where, now I enjoy it. I mean, I like talking about our program. I wouldn't have talked about it nearly as much early if people would have joined in and started going for it on fourth down and started onside kicking, because I'm losing my advantage. Mm-hmm. But nobody did it. I mean, much to my disbelief, because I thought, okay, somebody's winning, somebody's going to copy you. They're not, because of all the risk aversion. So now I enjoy the media, and then I start getting corporate gigs out of it because people like to hear coaches talk. And I make way more money doing that than I do coaching. Yeah. And so I'm getting to do what I love. And now I love speaking, at corporate things, because they like coaches. They like the comparison. There's a lot of similarities, like you and I talked about before we got on. But throughout the thing, and then I started getting to meet, people started reaching out to me. Nick Saban came in and sat down and wanted to talk to me and just go, what were you doing? What are you doing? He wasn't going to do it. He doesn't need to do it. But he did wonder, which made me realize I've taken things away. If the greatest in the game are asking me,
that's right,
that means they're always looking for something new and better, no matter how successful they are. And then, I was doing not a football thing, but I was speaking to the analytics group at Notre Dame, and Coach Belichick and them were playing on Sunday Night Football, I think it was, in Indianapolis. And through somebody I knew, he's like, hey, come down here. You're in the same state. You want to come down and watch our game and stuff. I got to meet him for the first time after the game. And
that's awesome.
Then it was the casual, hey, if you ever want to come up sometime and spend some time, do it. People just say that. And I just toiled over it because I was already a big Patriots fan and a fan of his because I like people that are ultra successful and know what they're different about and that can
Love it.
stay there. It's easy to get there once or twice, but to stay there.
Sustain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my son was at that time, he was in high school playing for me, and Bill was so nice. And Bill took him and walked out into the stadium and spent like 30 minutes talking to him. And later on, my son Zach, who now coaches for me, he goes, Dad, he said if we want to come up, just call him. And I'm like, God, no, but I did it. And all of a sudden we got to go up there and we started going up there every year. And so the beauty of it is now I've gotten to meet all these people that are ultra successful, not even just in football, and talk to them and spend some time with them and see what makes them tick, from the Sabans and the Belichicks to the Malcolm Gladwells to the Daryl Moreys, who I thought was instrumental in turning Houston Rockets franchise around.
Yeah.
I know they fired him this past year, but to meeting the people that were great and different, I've met actors in Hollywood, people. I mean, it's crazy how this has turned out. But every time I'm there, I try to get something from them that especially people that have sustained success, or even the flash in the pans that have had that immediate. Do you think that was talent, or did you do something different? And I want to drag it out of them. And man, when you open your mind, like I was surprised Nick Saban would even ask a guy like me, and Coach Belichick would even take an interest. When you look and go, those guys are recognized at the top of their game. Malcolm Gladwell is recognized as one of the great writers, of modern times. And they're still asking questions. Who am I to think I know everything?
That's right.
And can't change. So that's been a big cool part of it.
Yeah, I bet.
You got to tell me to shut up. I just keep rambling.
You're all right. We'll wrap up here, but no, that is great. I mean, what great experiences, and I agree. We've talked about it on here so many times. I don't want it to sound arrogant, but I've asked a lot of people. I don't. It's easy to find out. I tell my 3 young boys it's easy to be successful, but can you sustain it? And so hearing those things really intrigues me, and that's special. And where you're at must be special, Coach, and what you have going on, because there's a lot of people on the outside probably that think you would have been gone by now. But I think, I do have maybe 1 or 2 things after this, and we'll get into rapid fire. But what would you say to somebody listening right now, Coach, that has a crazy idea, but if you dive a little deeper, they're afraid, they're worried, they're uncertain, they're doubting, that's creeping in, and that's taking over. Why should they not give in to any of that?
Out of all the media interviews I've ever done, you were the only person to ever ask about conviction. And that is such a big part of this and introducing new ideas, especially radical ones that are way different. I'd say the first thing is you've got to decide, number one, can you base that, when people question you, because they will, even if it's successful immediately, and it probably won't always be successful, they're going to ask you questions. And can you really give them an explanation as to why that is based on something that makes sense? Maybe it's backed up scientifically or numerically, like some of my stuff is. And then you've got to decide what your conviction level is. I got to the point where I either talked myself into it, because like I said, it's pre-Moneyball, pre-analytics, where I didn't just think. I knew this was right.
Yeah, right.
And you got to decide what your conviction level is. Am I going to do I really believe this is the best and right way to do this, and it's worth whatever comes with it? And if it is, take your stand and be willing to fail and have to go somewhere else if it doesn't work. Or is it going to be, I'm going to try it and I'm going to give up if it doesn't go good early on because I'm not willing to put up with it? And here's the thing, and I can tell you my favorite emotional psychological study that I've ever read, but this is how people are impacted. When when you're sitting here and you're in your office and me and you are talking and the emotions aren't involved, it's easy to say, I'm going to implement that new idea. I just watched Kelley do it. It worked. I'm going to implement mine. But then when you get into it and people start questioning it doesn't work, now your emotions come in. And I've since wanted to know why that factors in. But the thing is, when you get emotional about things, your brain secretes something called cortisol. And cortisol is a hormone that it floods the frontal cortex of your brain. That's the decision-making part. You're not able to make as good of decisions or as quick of decisions when you are emotional, and it's a real physiological thing. And so you've got to make the decisions before you get into the emotion of it. If,
That's
I
good.
mean,
That's good.
really make your decision before you start it and go, at what point am I going to throw this away? Because if you don't, you will always let other people affect your decision that you've spent time and time and time in doing. And they've watched one time and decided to comment on social media or in the newspaper, on television about, and you're going to feel forced to not. So have your number one, be able to defend it always. And number two, decide what your conviction level is. And number three, decide that you're not going to let the emotions make the decision for you.
Wow, that's really
And
good. That's
those are the
really,
three big
yeah,
ones.
that's great. That's really, really good. Hey, I want to just ask before I go into rapid fire, what do you do to learn? It sounds like you're a reader. Or there's some other things that you do, or what's your favorite book? Some of that stuff right now. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I am a reader, and it's hard. You think everybody thinks they don't have time to read, and you got to make some time to do everything. I mean, we all know that. And I probably haven't read a football book in 20 years. And everybody's like, "Oh, coaches read football. How to defend the spread option, or how to attack the 4-3." Don't do it, because if you read that kind of stuff, what are you doing? You're being brainwashed into the way everybody else is doing
That's
this,
right.
and that's not what I want to be.
Yeah.
I want to read books that make me think. So I try to read two kinds of books. Ones that talk about psychology of people and how they think, and how to, one of my favorite books that really helped a lot was Made to Stick. It's a book called Made to Stick.
Yeah.
And it's really about how it starts off about how to advertise things where it sticks in people's brain, because the goal is to get them to try your product or whatever. But psychologically, there's little buttons you can push to do that. Of course, then I want to spin things out of that. Well, if that's the case, then how do I affect my coaches? How do I affect my teammates? Well, I mean, my players, and get them to do what I want to do faster, more efficiently. And everybody's got a button that you can push that appeals to them psychologically more than other people. Find their button and you can work with it. My other kind of book I like to read are books that make you think differently. And I give you Malcolm Gladwell's books. I love them because they all make me think about something in a way I would have never thought about it before. And if I can look, and he's presenting, let me think about David and Goliath. I don't know if you've read that.
Yep. Yeah.
Everybody thinks the David and Goliath, there's big Goliath and little David beat him. It's the story against the little guy beating the big guy, the little company beating corporate America, whatever. And he presents it in a completely different way. The guy goes over there, researches it. They look at the manuscripts and the scrolls. And in reality, he basically came out and said, if there were a Las Vegas line on it, David would have been the favorite.
Yeah.
Goliath was this guy that couldn't see, and he was going to hand fight you. David had been in the military where he's the slingshot guy that's got to be able to hit a target, and he gets to take the slingshot. So he just gets down there, doesn't even touch the guys, map done, ball game. And he was the favorite. But, we presented it. Well, he made me realize, even in my game, don't think about it like everybody. Really step back and be unbiased. If I had been unbiased and known all the facts about David and Goliath, and not listened to my grandma tell me the story, or not read the Bible and just look at that part of it, but had really researched, what about David? What about Goliath? The guy couldn't walk down the hill by himself. Maybe I would have thought differently about it too, probably would have. So it's taught me to think differently about my game, about how to deal with people. So that one, I like the ones that make you think differently. And then my favorite one, and the bad part is you got to get past the first two to get to the great one. I mean, my favorite book ever written, it's close between that and David and Goliath and the Bible. The Bible have to be first. You got to say that. But
Right.
if you're me, there's Stephen J. Levitt and another Stephen guy. They wrote Freakonomics. You ever heard of Freakonomics?
I have heard of it. I've not read it.
Freakonomics, it's hard to get through, but basically they take several things that we think are just givens over the years, and they really want to research and present a different way to look at them and try to prove that that's not for the right. And I'm not, this is going to sound bad, but this is the one that comes to my mind. They go to inner city Chicago and look and see why are African American kids not making as high a test grades as the Caucasian kids. And, it was, everything comes out of that, from some people saying, well, they're not as smart, or some people say, their parents weren't educated or whatever. They present all the facts and you're like, oh, that's why, and I never had any idea. Or, standardized tests are biased against African American, just anything and all the things that come out of that. Then you go to that. When they do that, they do it with sumo wrestlers. They do, just weird things. And there's a lot of high education jargon that goes in there that you got to just get through. Then they came up with Super Freakonomics, but then the next one is the most readable, best book. It's called Think Like a Freak. And the same two guys wrote it, and I absolutely loved it. And it made me go, it was really the cherry on top that goes, think differently, really try to think, to the point now where I kind of overanalyze things when there's an obvious answer.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
my house is on fire, get out. Well, could it stay around the walls and I could save the things in the middle? You're
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
But think like a freak. So Think Like a Freak, David and Goliath, and then the Bible are my best three.
So do you have to read those first two before you read Think Like a Freak or not? You'd suggest
I
it?
don't know. I
Okay.
did. I would at least read a couple of
Got it.
chapters because so you could understand their mentality. Because I
For
don't
sure.
think you'll completely get Think Like a Freak if you don't. And the great part is Think Like a Freak is so much more readable for the average audience than those first two.
Gotcha.
But I don't think you'll get it unless you read at least part of the first two. And
Nice.
either way, you'll be glad you did.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Well, hey, we're gonna go rapid fire to finish. I'm gonna test out your jump shot here. 3-pointers. All right. So number
I'm actually
one.
pretty good at shooting a basketball.
All right. Standing still
Let's
jumpers.
hope it transfers to this.
Yeah, it's not too difficult. Number one, if people could learn, just one thing. There's so much in here, but if you want them to take one thing from this talk, what would you want it to be, Kevin?
That there's always an answer to get better, whether it's life or your job or your friends or relationships. There's always an answer to help people or help yourself or help your job or whatever. It's out there. How far and how much are you willing to take? Basically, how convicted are you
Yeah.
to doing that?
If Kevin Kelley could have came over here in Kevin Bille's shoes today and asked him a question, I think I do this wrong every time. What question would have you asked that I did not ask today?
I'm going to say this: you've. I don't give out compliments lightly because I don't believe in building false self-esteem. I think we try to do that too much. The trophy generation. You've asked a few different questions. I've been interviewed thousands of times. You've asked different questions than anybody's ever asked me,
I appreciate
and
it.
which is good, which I love because now it makes me think. I probably would have. I maybe, and you this probably got answered in there. Is what do you think's the number one thing to get you on top, and what do you think's the number one thing, hardest thing, or outside factor to stay up there? Maybe that because yesterday I did a completely different group of guys. There's a podcast, a video cast called Drinking Brothers, very highly followed group. I mean, like a little Barstool Sports kind of spinoff thing where they got millions of guys that listen to them and stuff. And it was a different thing. But one of the things they talked about were, now I'm not saying this. They go, well, there's Bill Belichick, there's Nick Saban, there's Michael Jordan, there's Tom Brady, and there's you. Y'all are all the same. And I'm like, what in the world? They're like, you're able to stay at a high level for a long time and do this and I'm just like, okay, I'm not there. But they started giving me reasons why it's pretty cool. But then we started to talk. We got into what makes those guys different. Now, luckily, I never met Michael Jordan. I got to be in the same room with him, but I've met Bill and Nick and Tom and spent some time with Tom Brady. And I've got to see what they do to stay on top. And they've all got some similarities, but all of them also have some very vastly different things that I think they do to keep them on top too. And so I think that's a great question because there's certain people that once they get there, matter of fact, I would say 90% of the world, if you achieve your goal, I mean, you set a really high goal, and mine was to win a state championship with this group of kids. And the first time I did it, there's two kinds of people at that point. There's the 90% that go, yes, that was awesome. And they pat themselves on the back and they just love it. And they just have a natural letdown. And then there's the 10% that get addicted to that feeling and whatever it was, and you've got to have it again immediately the next year. Yeah. And then you get addicted to that next one. You're like, God, I got to have it. Or if you didn't get it the next year, like, this sucks. I've got to find a way to get it back. There's only a small percentage that really feel that way because, and I was lucky enough to love feeling that way and to not win the next year after that and see how much I hated it and how much I hated and I watched the kids walk off crying because they really thought we were going to win the next one too. And whatever it is, you get addicted to that feeling. And it is an addiction. I mean,
100%.
when we win, and I'm lucky, I've been coaching 18 years, we've won 9. For the next 12 months, food tastes better. Every song sounds better.
100%.
You know, I mean, people can say what they want to, honk at me, you know, people on the road rage. Hey, how you doing? You know, I don't care. You know, I mean, the world's a better place. And unfortunately, I'm probably a better person, you know, because I'm a look, but you got to find a way not to let down. You've got to do the same things you were doing, plus add a minute or two every day, because all those minutes add up.
Yeah,
so that's probably, again, I answered too long, but that's the 2 things I probably would ask.
Yeah, no, good. And then finally, you know, good stuff's the name of this. Just something I always say. What's anything that you feel would be appropriate in closing before we dive into some of your personal stuff? Just some good stuff.
One of my favorite things that I've come across that I try to do with our kids. I used to do it every single day with them. I need to get back to that because it's my favorite thing. And on Twitter, sometimes I'll try to once a week do a quote. I do once a day. I try to do an inspirational quote, but I try to do one involving this. It's make someone's day. You know, when I started speaking corporately, I started talking about, you know, as I was talking to people, because I like to hang out and talk to them afterwards. Sometimes it's the CEO people. Sometimes I like to talk to the regular workers. And what I've discovered is I think everybody in life wants one thing. Everybody has one thing. I don't care if you live and you don't have any electricity and you live in a poor part of Africa, or if you live in the highest hedge fund class of upper socioeconomic status in New York City and you make $5 billion a year. We all want one thing, and that's to be happy.
Yeah.
We all think it takes something different to do that. Some people think it's winning football games. Some people think it's a good-looking woman or a good-looking man. Some people think it's money. But really, that's not it. We think those are drivers to make us happy, when in reality, I think the thing that really, truly makes everybody happy, and they all want to be happy, is when you do something nice for somebody else.
Yeah.
Now, it's got to, so I tell our kids, you know, make someone's day. Today it's make someone's day. Find something small that you don't do every day. Like if you get up every day and say, bye, Mom, I love you, you can't count that because you do it every day. But if you don't ever do that, walk over and say, Mom wants you to say, thank you for everything you've done for me. I love you. That'll make her day. And I promise you, you will feel good after that. There's no way you don't. And then there's a physiological thing. Your body secretes that endorphin. You feel good. There's a little serotonin there. You feel good. And so that's the one thing I say that the good stuff is try to get people around you. It's a little pay it forwardy, but don't wait for somebody to pay you forward something to pay it forward. Try to do something small to make somebody's day. Do that every day and never forget that. And you will have some good in every single day that you have, no matter how crappy days seem sometimes.
Right. Yep. Yeah, I love it. Good job, man. 3 for 3. There you go. Your jumper was good. Hey, as we just close up here, can you tell me, I want to know 2 things. Number 1, social media. Where can people connect with you on social media if they want to follow?
Yeah, on Twitter, and that's my biggest one. I don't do Snapchat and some of that other stuff. I started doing Instagram last year, but it's at Coach Kelley 1, and the Coach Kelley has an EY and the number 1. So it's at Coach Kelley 1. And there's always some football stuff. I love getting on during football games and talking strategy and analytics. There's a lot more of inspirational, motivational stuff and funny stuff. You know, I follow some people that do some fun, that put funny, really funny videos.
Yeah.
I'll put them because people need to laugh. You know, live, love, laugh. There's a lot to that.
Yeah.
And but that, and then if you, I've got a website. If you need a corporate speaker, big into that. Love it. Enjoy it and take something out of it. But I've got one. It's called CoachKevinKelley.com with an EY. But the easier way is at Coach Kelley 1 on Twitter. You can always direct message me, because I accept direct messages even if they're not following me. Sometimes you got to follow both. Right. And I got that on there, but I've hooked up a lot of ways there. So that's the 2 things.
Yeah, that was going to be the second. I was going to ask about that website, but how about at least you and I were talking about some of these videos that you wanted to mention, you know?
Oh, yeah.
How about you just finish with that, if you don't mind, please?
If you just want some fun behind the scenes, what it looks like, what's so funny is every time I go speak somewhere corporately, I started telling, you know, the people that hired me, hey, bring 3 or 4 people if you're ever in Little Rock. Come down. I'll let you stand on the sidelines, hang out. We're very Pete Carroll-ish when he was at USC. Open for business, people, because I want our kids to realize people like watching them do their thing. And I had the first company take me on. It was actually Tulsa Tube Bending, which is a bigger company than I thought it was. And he brought his, he's like, Coach, I'm going to take you up on it. So I'm like, whatever. Next year he called me and said, can I bring my people? Have a big game. I'm like, oh my gosh, but you got to do what you say. Came and stood and let him come in the locker room. You know, he's got some of the women on the staff. They didn't want to be here, but they're down there and he just loved it. We've kind of maintained a relationship. But what I say is I like to interact with those people and invite them to come and stand on the sideline. But what that made it happen is, last year, a group called Overtime. It's a sports platform on the internet, on Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter. And they've got a YouTube channel and they want to do a web TV series on us. And so they came and just basically filmed us for the entire year, followed me around on Saturdays and Sundays. And it was kind of behind the scenes look at the craziness that's Pulaski Academy football. And they aired it last May. They were hoping, I asked them when they were starting, what do you want to get on your platforms view wise? They were like, well, 2 million we think would be too good. They're like at 27 million views on all the things they've done. So it's good. We did another season. It won't come out till May, but the whole last season's available on their YouTube channel. It's called Overtime, Overtime season, SZN. But if you type up, you know, Pulaski Academy or Kevin Kelley Overtime, that YouTube will come up. And it's pretty good. I mean, obviously, if that many people watched it, you know, it's pretty good. But it's behind the scenes. It's fun. The guy did a good job picking out 4 characters, me and 3 of the players, following us a little bit. There's a ton of game stuff, a ton of practice stuff, some other stuff, and it's turned into a pretty good little series, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. I've seen one of them. I'm going to dive into it more. Well, hey, Coach, man, thank you so much. I mean, honestly, like, I'm as transparent as I'll get out. This is a game changer for me. I saw this stuff 3-4 years ago, and I was just amazed by it. But the part that I'm guilty on is I didn't do like what I asked people to do on here is make it applicable in my life. I mean, I have so much respect for you from afar and what you do. It's unbelievably, it's so impressive when you go against the norm, and then being as successful as you are. I mean, kudos to you. The conviction to me is the first thing that I think of when, you know, when I watch you and research all this and just talk to you in general. So I really appreciate it. This is going to have a great deal of impact and add a lot of value to a lot of people's lives. So thank you so much.
Oh man, I appreciate it. I'm honored to be on here, and if it's able to help one person, maybe I made somebody's day, you know, there. But I'll try to make somebody's here too. But that's what it's all about, you know, in a country that was divided and political and the craziness and we used to be such a group. You know, I always said, well, the other day I said on Twitter, I wish a bunch of aliens would come down from Mars and try to take over our planet. We'd unite pretty freaking quick if that were the case. You know, then it's us against them. And I wish we could get back there. And some of that is just making everybody realize that we're all humans. We've all got good things to offer. And trying to do some of those things kind of brings everybody together. So I'm hoping in some way, shape, or fashion, we can all help that a little bit and leave it a little better than when we got here.
Yeah, amen to that. Well, hey, I appreciate your time. Continue success in what you're doing. Yeah, hey, for everybody listening, I mean, what are some things that you need to do in your life that maybe you're not doing right now that are against the norm? I hope you take the time to dive into this and think about it as much as I will. So thanks again for listening. Till next time, good stuff.